Martin Luther King Jr. is speaking to a packed church when an angry young man interrupts him, says, "Nonviolence is weakness, we need to fight back." King stops mid-sentence, looks at him. What happens in the next 10 minutes transforms an angry revolutionary into a disciple of peace. Montgomery, Alabama. March 1956, Thursday evening, 7:30 p.m. The Dexter Avenue Baptist Church is packed beyond capacity. 400 people crammed into a space built for 250. Wooden pews groaning under the weight, people standing along the walls, sitting in the aisles, crowding the doorways, the air thick with body heat and tension and the smell of sweat and cheap cologne and the faint sweetness of church ladies' perfume. 3 months into the bus boycott. 3 months of walking. 3 months of threats and bombings and arrests. 3 months of white Montgomery trying everything to break them, and they haven't broken, not yet, but the cracks are showing. Martin Luther King Jr. stands at the pulpit, 27 years old, dark suit, white shirt, thin tie, looks older than his years. The bags under his eyes tell the story of sleepless nights, death threats, a bombed house, a wife and baby daughter he worries about every time he leaves home. He's been speaking for 40 minutes, voice hoarse but still strong. Still finding that rhythm that makes people lean forward, makes them forget their tired feet and empty stomachs, makes them believe that somehow love can defeat hate. King is explaining the philosophy again, the philosophy that confuses some and infuriates others. Nonviolent resistance, loving your enemy, meeting hate with love. He's quoting Gandhi, quoting Jesus, quoting Thoreau, building his case brick by brick. Says we must not return violence under any condition. I know this is difficult. I know some of you are tired of being beaten and not striking back. A voice cuts through the sanctuary like a knife. Tired? We're dying. Everyone turns. A young man is standing in the middle of the church, maybe 22, 23 years old, tall, muscular, wearing work clothes, boots caked with mud from a construction site. His name is James Lawson, not the famous James Lawson who would later teach nonviolence workshops. A different James Lawson. A bricklayer from the North Side, a veteran who served in Korea and came home to find he still couldn't drink from the same fountain as white men. James is shaking, not from fear, from rage, the kind of rage that's been building for 23 years, the kind that starts when you're 5 and your mama has to explain why you can't play in the nice park, the kind that grows every time someone calls you boy or N or worse, the kind that hardens into something sharp and dangerous. King stops speaking. The church goes dead silent, 400 people holding their breath. James takes a step forward, then another, walking down the center aisle toward the pulpit, toward King, his boots loud on the wooden floor, each step echoing. Says nonviolence is weakness, Reverend. You stand up there talking about love while they bomb our houses and beat our children. Love didn't stop them from blowing up your porch. Love didn't stop them from throwing my cousin in jail for looking at a white woman. Love won't stop the next bomb. King doesn't move, doesn't step back, doesn't call for someone to remove this man, just watches him approach. Eyes calm, patient, the way you watch a wounded animal that might bite. James stops at the front of the church, 10 feet from King, close enough to see the sweat on King's forehead, close enough to see that King is afraid, but not of him. Afraid of something else, something bigger. James's voice fills the church, says, "My grandfather was a slave. My father was a sharecropper who died with nothing. I went to war for this country and came home to segregation. And you want me to love the people who did this? You want me to turn the other cheek while they spit in my face?" Murmurs ripple through the crowd, some people nodding. They feel it too. This exhaustion with being good while evil wins. This frustration with dignity when dignity gets you nothing but more suffering. King raises his hand. Silence falls again. He doesn't answer immediately. Just looks at James. Really looks at him. Sees the pain beneath the anger. Sees the young man who went to war believing in America and came home to discover America didn't believe in him. Sees himself, a younger version, before he understood what he now understands. King steps down from the pulpit, not around it, down into the congregation, walks toward James. Every eye in the church following him. He stops 3 feet from James, close enough to touch, close enough for James to hit him if he wanted. King is smaller than James, shorter by 4 inches, lighter by 30 pounds. If this turns violent, King loses. Everyone in the church knows it. King speaks, not to the crowd now, just to James, but his voice carries, every word audible in the silent church. Says, "What's your name, brother?" James hesitates. Didn't expect a question, expected an argument, expected to be shouted down or thrown out. Says, "James Lawson." King nods. Says, "James, I hear your pain. I feel it too. When they bombed my house, my first thought wasn't love, it was rage. I wanted to find the men who did it and make them pay. I wanted to protect my wife and daughter the way a man is supposed to protect his family. With force, with violence, with blood if necessary." The church leans in. They've never heard King talk like this, never heard him admit to the rage they all feel. King continues. Says, "I stood on my broken porch that night looking at a crowd of armed black men ready to start a war, and I wanted to let them. Part of me wanted to say, go, burn this city down, make them pay for every lynching and every beating and every humiliation." James is listening now, not interrupting. Something shifting in his eyes. King says, "You know why I didn't?" James shakes his head. King says, "Not because I'm better than you, not because I don't feel what you feel. I didn't let them fight because I knew what would happen next. We would kill some of them, they would kill more of us, the National Guard would come, martial law, more death, and when the smoke cleared, what would change? Nothing, except more mothers crying over dead sons, more children growing up without fathers, more hate breeding, more hate breeding, more hate until there's nothing left but hate." King pauses, lets the words settle. Says, "Violence is not weakness, James. I never said it was. It takes courage to fight. It takes courage to pick up a gun and face your enemy. I'm not questioning your courage." James's jaw tightens. Says, "Then what are you questioning?" King says, "Your strategy." The word hangs in the air. Strategy. Not morality, not righteousness. Strategy. King continues, says, "You're a veteran, James. You understand strategy. You understand that you don't fight a battle you can't win. What happens if we fight them with violence? They have the guns, they have the police, they have the National Guard, they have the courts, they have the jails, they have everything. We fight them with violence. We lose. Not because we're weak, because we're outnumbered and outgunned. That's not cowardice, that's arithmetic." James opens his mouth to respond, closes it, the military part of his brain recognizing the logic. You don't charge a fortified position with inferior numbers. You find another way. King sees the opening, presses forward, says, "But there's something they don't have, something they can't beat with guns and dogs and fire hoses. They don't have moral authority. They know, deep down, that what they're doing is wrong. The whole world knows it's wrong, and every time they beat us while we refuse to fight back, they prove it. Every time they bomb our churches and we respond with hymns instead of bullets, they lose. Not on the battlefield, in the court of human conscience." King's voice rises now, the preacher returning. Says, "When that photograph goes around the world, the photograph of a white policeman beating a peaceful black woman, what does the world see? They don't see a weak woman. They see a strong woman. They see a woman with more dignity than the man with the club. They see the lie of white supremacy exposed, and that photograph does more damage to segregation than 100 bullets ever could." James is quiet, still angry, but thinking now, the rage cooling into something else, not agreement yet, but consideration. King softens his voice, says, "James, I'm not asking you to be weak. I'm asking you to be strong in a different way. The hardest way. The way that doesn't give them what they want." James says, "What do they want?" King says, "They want us to be violent. They want us to riot and loot and burn, because then they can say, see, we told you they were animals. Then they can justify everything they do to us. Every time we respond to their violence with violence, we prove their lies true. But when we respond with dignity, with discipline, with love, we prove them wrong. We take away their excuse. We expose them to themselves and to the world." A woman in the front row starts crying, quietly. She's heard King speak before, but never like this. Never this raw. Never this honest about the strategy behind the sacrifice. King takes another step closer to James, almost touching now. Says, "You asked me how I can love people who bomb my house. I'll tell you the truth. I don't love them. Not the way I love my wife and daughter, not with my feelings. I love them with my will. I choose to see their humanity even when they deny mine. Not because they deserve it, because I deserve it. Because hate is a poison that kills the one who holds it. I refuse to let them make me into a monster. I refuse to become the thing I'm fighting. James's eyes are wet. He blinks, looks away, looks back. King says, "The man who bombed my house is a coward. He did it at night, hid his face, ran away. He's afraid of me, afraid of what I represent, afraid that his children might one day look at him and ask why. If I kill him, I become him, just another man with blood on his hands. But if I forgive him, if I keep fighting without becoming a killer, I stay free. He's the one in prison, prison of his own hate. I'm free." The church is silent, except for the sounds of people crying. Not just the women now, men too. Grown men who haven't cried in years, something breaking open in the room, something being released. James stands there, tears running down his face, not ashamed of them anymore. The rage is still there, but it's transforming, becoming something else, something he doesn't have a name for yet. He says, voice cracking, "I'm just so tired, Reverend. Tired of being hated for something I can't change. Tired of being strong all the time. Tired of swallowing my anger until it chokes me." King reaches out, puts his hand on James's shoulder, says, "I know, brother, I'm tired too. We're all tired, but tired feet and rested souls, that's what this is. Your feet can be tired, your body can be exhausted, but your soul, your spirit, that part of you that they can never touch, that can rest, that can be at peace, even in the middle of the storm." James breaks, not dramatically, just quietly folds, his shoulders drop, his head bows, and he weeps. Not the angry tears of frustration, but the cleansing tears of release, of letting go of something he's been carrying for 23 years. King pulls him into an embrace. Right there in front of 400 people, the preacher and the bricklayer, the advocate of non-violence and the man who wanted to fight, holding each other while the church watches. Someone starts humming an old spiritual, "We shall overcome." Others join. The humming becomes singing. Soft at first, then stronger. 400 voices rising together. James pulls back, wipes his face with his rough hands, looks at King, says, "I don't know if I can do what you do. Love like you love, but I want to try. I want to learn." King smiles. The first real smile of the night, says, "That's all any of us can do. Try. Learn. Fall down. Get up. Try again. You're not alone in this, James. None of us are." King walks James to a pew, sits down next to him. The congregation watches but gives them space. This is holy ground now. Something sacred happening. King says, "Let me tell you what non-violence really is. It's not passive. It's not weak. It's the most aggressive thing you can do. You know why?" James shakes his head. King says, "Because it forces your enemy to see you as human. When you fight back, they can say you're an animal, a threat, something to be put down. But when you stand there taking their blows, refusing to fall, refusing to hate, you force them to look at themselves. You hold up a mirror, and what they see terrifies them." James says, "What do they see?" King says, "The truth, that they're beating an unarmed man, that they're attacking someone who won't defend himself. That makes them the monster, not you. Every blow they land is a blow to their own humanity. Every curse they shout echoes in their own conscience. You're not the one being destroyed, James. They are. They just don't know it yet." James sits with this, turning it over in his mind, the soldier in him recognizing a different kind of warfare, psychological, moral, a battle for souls instead of territory. King continues, says, "I've seen it happen. I've seen white men raise their fists to strike and stop. Just stop. Because they looked in my eyes and saw something they didn't expect. Not fear, not hate, just humanity. And for 1 second, one tiny second, they remembered that I'm a human being. Same as them. That second is everything. That's where change begins." James says, "But what about the ones who don't stop? The ones who keep beating?" King nods, says, "They exist. They beat us anyway. But here's what they can't do. They can't make us hate them. That's our power, the power to choose our response. They control their fists, we control our hearts. And in the end, hearts matter more than fists. Fists can break bones. Only hearts can break cycles." An old woman in the third row says amen. Others join, the call and response building again. But quieter now. More intimate. King says, "James, you asked me about my house being bombed. Let me tell you what happened inside me that night. I was terrified, for my wife, for my daughter, for myself. And I was angry, angrier than I've ever been. I wanted blood. I wanted revenge. I wanted to find the men who did it and make them suffer the way they made me suffer. The church is silent. This is confession now, the preacher revealing his own struggle. King says, I prayed that night. Not a nice prayer, an angry prayer. I said, Lord, I can't do this. I'm not strong enough. They're going to kill my family and I can't stop them, and I don't know how to love them anymore. I'm done. James leans forward. This is the king he needed to hear. Not the saint on the podium, the man wrestling with the same demons. King says, and do you know what happened? Nothing. No voice from heaven. No sudden peace, just silence. But in that silence I heard something. My own heartbeat. Still beating. Still alive. And I realized that was the answer. I'm still here. They tried to kill me and I'm still here. And as long as I'm here I get to choose who I become. They chose to be bombers. I choose to be something else. James says, what do you choose to be? King says, free. That's what I choose. Free from their hate. Free from the cycle. Free to imagine a world where my daughter plays with white children and nobody thinks it's strange. They can bomb my house. They can threaten my family. They can kill my body. But they cannot touch my freedom. That lives in here. He taps his chest, and no bomb can reach it. King turns to the congregation, says, this is what they're afraid of. Not our fists, our unity, not our guns, our love. When we stand together, when we lift each other up, when we transform our pain into purpose, they have no weapon against that. None. The meeting ends differently than it began. People hugging, people crying, people who came in exhausted, leaving with something restored. Not energy, something deeper. Faith. Not in God, though that too. Faith in each other. Faith in the possibility that love might actually work. James Lawson doesn't leave. Stays after the meeting. Talks with King for another hour. Asks questions. Listens to answers. Begins the long journey from rage to purpose. Over the following months, James becomes one of King's most trusted organizers. Not because he stopped being angry. The anger never fully leaves. But because he learns to channel it. To use it as fuel instead of letting it use him. He teaches others what King taught him. Becomes a bridge between the young hotheads and the old guard. James starts attending every meeting, every workshop, every training session on nonviolent resistance. He learns the techniques, how to protect your head when they beat you, how to go limp when they drag you, how to look your attacker in the eye without hatred, how to sing when you want to scream. It's the hardest thing he's ever done, harder than combat in Korea. In war, you can fight back. Here you absorb, you endure, you transform. One night, 3 months after the church confrontation, James is walking home from a meeting. 3 white men step out of an alley, baseball bats, drunk, looking for trouble. The old James would have fought, would have taken at least one of them down before they got him, would have died with his fist swinging. The new James stops, raises his hands, says, I don't want any trouble, brothers. They laugh, brothers, and calling them brothers. The first bat catches James across the shoulder. He goes down, doesn't fight back, covers his head the way King taught him, takes the blows, prays, not for rescue, for the strength to not hate. They beat him for 2 minutes, feels like 2 hours, then they get bored, walk away laughing, leave him bleeding on the sidewalk. James lies there looking up at the stars, body screaming, soul quiet. He doesn't hate them, he feels something else, something he never expected, pity. He pities them. These men so broken by their own hatred that they beat strangers in alleys. These men so empty that violence is the only way they feel powerful. These men who will go home and face themselves in the mirror and have to live with what they did. James gets up, walks home, doesn't report it, doesn't seek revenge, just keeps walking, keeps organizing, keeps teaching. That night changes him more than the church ever did, because now he knows. Now he's tested. Nonviolence isn't theory anymore. It's practice. It's real. And it works. Not because it stopped the beating, because it stopped the hatred. His hatred, the only hatred he can control. Word spreads about what happened, about the young man who took a beating and didn't fight back, who got up and walked home and showed up to the next meeting with bandages on his face and fire in his eyes. Not the fire of revenge, the fire of purpose. Other young men come to James, the angry ones, the ones who want to fight. He tells them his story, both stories. The night he challenged King, the night he got beaten. He shows them a different kind of strength, the strength to absorb and transform. King notices, starts giving James more responsibility, recognizes in him something rare. A man who has walked through the fire of his own rage and come out the other side. A man who can speak to the angry because he was angry. A man who can teach non-violence because he had to learn it the hard way. In 1963, James is in Birmingham, organizing the Children's March, teaching teenagers how to face fire hoses and police dogs without running, without fighting back, without becoming what they oppose. The Birmingham campaign is the hardest yet. Bull Connor unleashes dogs on children, turns fire hoses on teenagers with enough pressure to strip bark from trees, fills the jails with bodies. James is there through all of it, teaching what King taught him, holding young men back when they want to charge the police lines, reminding them that the cameras are watching, that every drop of black blood on white hands is a testimony against segregation. One afternoon, a 16-year-old boy is knocked down by a fire hose. He gets up bleeding, fists clenched, ready to rush the fireman. James grabs him, holds him, whispers in his ear about King's words, about choosing who you become. The boy's fists slowly unclench. He starts singing. Others join. That image goes around the world, bleeding children singing while white men attack them. It does more damage to segregation than any riot ever could. In 1965, he's at Selma, walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, beaten bloody on Bloody Sunday. James takes a club to the head, falls, blood in his eyes. For one moment the old rage returns. His hand reaches for a rock, grips it. Then he hears singing. Someone singing, "We shall overcome." Weak voice, but singing. James drops the rock, starts singing too, adds his voice to the chorus. In 1968, he's in Memphis with King, still learning, still growing, still struggling with the rage that never fully dies. He's there when the bullet finds King on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. There when the man who taught him to love falls and doesn't get up. At King's funeral, James Lawson carries the casket. The bricklayer from Montgomery who once called non-violence weakness, carrying the body of the man who proved him wrong, crying again. Not tears of rage this time, tears of grief for a teacher lost. Tears of gratitude for a life changed. Years later, someone asks James about that night in 1956. That night he interrupted King. That night he was ready to burn it all down. James is old now, grey hair, arthritic hands that once laid bricks and later built a movement. He thinks for a long time before answering. Says, "I walked into that church wanting to fight, wanting to hurt someone because I was hurting. King didn't argue with me, didn't tell me I was wrong. He saw my pain, he honoured it, then he showed me another way. Not a weaker way, a stronger way, a way that didn't require me to become the monster I was fighting." He pauses, eyes wet with memory. Says, "That night I learned that the opposite of hate isn't love. It's understanding. King understood me before he tried to change me. That's why I listened. That's why I stayed. That's why I'm still here, all these years later, still trying to teach what he taught me." 10 minutes. That's all it took. 10 minutes to transform an angry young man into a soldier for peace. 10 minutes to prove that the right words, spoken with the right love, can do what violence never could. King didn't win that confrontation with strength, didn't win it with argument, won it with empathy, with seeing the human being beneath the rage, with offering not judgment, but understanding. That's the lesson of that Thursday night in Montgomery. Not that non-violence is easy. It isn't. Not that anger is wrong. It's not. The lesson is that anger without direction destroys. But anger transformed becomes fuel for change. James Lawson walked into that church ready to burn the world. He walked out ready to save it. Not because King defeated him, because King understood him and in understanding gave him something violence never could. A purpose, a path, a way to fight without losing his soul. Who in your life is James Lawson right now? Who's carrying rage they don't know what to do with? And when you meet them, will you argue with their anger or understand their pain? Because 10 minutes of understanding can change a lifetime of rage. King proved it in a Montgomery church in 1956. James Lawson lived it for the next 60 years. That's the power of non-violence. Not weakness, transformation. Not defeat, redemption. And that's why a preacher who wouldn't fight back built an army that couldn't be defeated.